The world knows André Rieu as the smiling waltz king glowing under fireworks, leading thousands into moments of pure joy. But behind the curls, the castles, and the standing ovations lies a truth almost no one sees. A childhood without love, a body that once collapsed under the weight of success, debts that nearly destroyed him, and the quiet woman who held everything together until time pulled her away. This is not just the story of a musician. It's the story of a man who spent his whole life trying to give others the happiness he never received, and now, at 75, must face the hardest question of all. How long can even a king keep dancing? People saw a man who made the whole world dance, but almost no one saw how close he once came to never standing on a stage again. André Rieu is known everywhere for his warm smile, his soft curls, and the way he lifts his violin like it is part of his own body. People watch him on stage and feel as if they have stepped into a dream. There are fireworks in the sky, castles built like fairy tales behind him, and thousands of people dancing together as if life suddenly became lighter. His concerts look almost magical, and for many fans around the world, André is not just a musician. He is someone who brings back feelings they thought they had, lost joy, hope, youth, and moments of pure escape from everyday worries. But the image the world sees is only one side of the story. André changed classical music in a way nobody expected. Waltzes were considered old-fashioned, something for quiet halls and strict audiences, yet he turned them into something alive, something people could feel in their hearts and feet. When he plays the Blue Danube, people rise from their seats without thinking. They hold hands with strangers, they smile, they cry, they dance. It does not matter if they are young or old. His concerts became a place where everyone forgets the rules and simply enjoys being alive for a few hours. For many people, this joy seems effortless. They imagine André waking up every day in a castle, living a perfect life, surrounded by music, wealth, and applause. He walks on stage looking relaxed, laughing with his orchestra, telling small jokes, and moving with the confidence of someone who has never known fear. When people see someone smile so much, they believe that person's life must be perfect. But smiles can hide more than they show, and André's life was never as simple as the lights that shine around him. Behind every bow he makes on stage, there were years of struggle. Behind every moment he encourages the crowd to stand up and dance, there were days when he could hardly stand himself. Behind every sold-out concert, there were months when he worried about money so deeply that he barely slept. André built a global music empire, but it was built on pressure, risk, and painful sacrifices. His concerts look like fairy tales, but keeping that dream alive cost him more than most people will ever know. From the outside, it looks like André lives in a world of constant celebration. But behind the celebrations were problems that almost broke him. There was a time when his body betrayed him, a time when dizziness and sickness made him collapse, and he wondered if he would ever play again. There were moments when he carried debts so heavy that one cancelled show could have destroyed everything he built. And there were emotional wounds from childhood that never fully healed, no matter how loud the applause became. The truth is that André's relationship with joy is more complicated than it appears. For him, joy was not just entertainment. It was something he needed to survive. Music gave him a place to breathe, a place to escape the coldness he knew as a child. Bringing happiness to others became a way for him to heal himself. When he smiles on stage, it is real, but it is also a choice to rise above his pain, to offer the audience something he wished he had growing up: warmth, connection, and love. People who watch André's concerts only see the bright lights. They do not see him backstage, moving slowly because his body is tired. They do not see the fear he once felt when illness stopped him from performing. They do not see the pressure of leading an orchestra and a company where more than 100 people depend on him for their living. They do not see the long nights when he had to think about debts, contracts, cancelled shows, and the weight of responsibility that few musicians ever carry. André made classical music fun and welcoming, but it came at a great personal price. He took risks no classical artist had taken. He built huge stages, recreated palaces, traveled non-stop, and worked tirelessly to bring his dream to life. The world loved what they saw, but they did not know the cost of keeping that dream alive. When people dance at his concerts, they feel free. But behind that freedom was a man who often felt trapped by expectations, by illness, and by the pressure to keep smiling even when he felt weak. Still, André never stopped. Even when life pushed him to the edge, he believed that sharing joy mattered. When he played his violin, he felt something open inside him, something that made all the pain feel lighter. Maybe that is why he kept going, even when he was exhausted. Maybe that is why he fought through illness, through fear, through debt. Maybe that is why he refused to give up, because for him, music was not a job, it was a lifeline. Today, millions know his name. They watch him in Maastricht, Melbourne, Tokyo, and everywhere in between. They call him the King of the Waltz. But behind the title is a man who had to fight harder than anyone realizes. His journey is full of light, but also full of shadows. It is beautiful, but it is also bruised. And the truth behind the smile is far more human than most people imagine. But before André Rieu became the King of the Waltz, he was a little boy who learned music long before he learned affection, and that wound shaped everything he became. Some artists are born from inspiration. Others, like André, are born from loneliness so sharp it becomes its own kind of music. André Rieu grew up in Maastricht, a calm and beautiful city, but his childhood inside the house was nothing like the warmth people imagine when they hear the word home. Music filled every room, yet it was not the kind of music that brings comfort. It was strict, demanding, and heavy. His father, a respected conductor, believed deeply in discipline. He followed the old style of leadership, where rules mattered more than feelings, and where perfection mattered more than encouragement. His mother was also serious and distant, someone who valued success but did not give the softness a child needs. André has said openly, without anger but with sadness, "My parents did not love me." For him, this was not a complaint. It was simply the truth he learned early in life. In their home, affection did not exist. No warm hugs, no gentle words, no signs that his efforts made anyone proud. The house had music, but it did not have love. When he laughed, he was told to be quiet. When he played with passion, he was told to focus. Everything had to be correct, controlled, and serious. Mistakes were not allowed, and joy was often treated like something unnecessary or childish. His father's presence created a cold atmosphere. He carried the same strict expression at home that he used in front of orchestras. When he practiced conducting, André watched from the side, not understanding why the man who brought music to life on stage could not soften even once for his own child. His mother, following the same values, pushed him to be disciplined, calm, and perfect. Together, they created a world where André learned early that feelings were something to hide, not something to express. The violin entered his life very early, and at first, it seemed like it might become a friend. But even the violin came with pressure. He practiced scales for hours, repeating them until his small fingers stung. Each mistake brought a tense silence or a sharp look. He learned to fear the moment his father listened. He loved the sound of the violin, but he feared the judgment that came with every wrong note. The violin became both his escape and his prison. It was the only thing that made him feel alive, yet the very thing that reminded him of the cold world he lived in. Some afternoons, he was taken to the theater where his father rehearsed. The orchestra played powerful pieces, and young André sat in the empty seats, legs dangling, quietly watching the musicians. To him, the stage became a second home, one where he observed adults creating beauty without joy. The players followed every gesture of his father's hand, serious and focused. And young André absorbed this energy. He loved the music, but he could feel the lack of warmth in the room. Even in those moments, he sensed something missing. He saw people producing wonderful sounds, but nobody seemed happy while doing it. Those long hours sitting alone, watching musicians from a distance, became a strange mixture of learning and loneliness. He saw the power of music, but he also saw how unhappy people could look while performing it. He began to wonder if music had to be this way. Did it always have to be cold? Did the audience always have to sit stiffly? Did musicians always have to hide their feelings? A quiet dream started forming inside him, an orchestra where people could smile, where the music felt alive, and where the audience felt welcomed instead of intimidated. This dream was not loud or rebellious. It was simply the whisper of a child who wanted the warmth he did not receive at home. If he could not find love inside his family, maybe he could create it on a stage someday. Maybe music could bring people together instead of keeping them apart. Maybe it could be joyful, not just serious. These early dreams became the seed of the André Rieu we know today, an artist who uses music to connect, to comfort, and to bring happiness to others because he knows how painful it feels when happiness is absent. But at that young age, he did not understand this fully. He only felt an emptiness that never went away. He practiced the violin to escape the silence of the house. He listened to orchestras to escape the coldness of his parents. Every note he played was a small attempt to feel something real. And slowly, without realizing it, André discovered that his deepest wish was not to be the best violinist. It was to be seen, understood, and loved. When people later ask why André smiles so much on stage, they do not know that the smile comes from a place of longing, not just joy. Bringing happiness to the audience healed the child inside him who never received any. This lonely beginning shaped his lifelong need to connect with people. When he later built his own orchestra, he made sure the musicians laughed, talked, and felt like a family. When he performed, he looked into the audience, hoping to give them the warmth he never received. When he created his famous concerts, full of dancing and joy, he was really creating the world he wished he had grown up in. But no matter how loudly a child dreams, tradition does not loosen its grip easily, and André's first steps into the classical world would feel like stepping into a cage. He mastered the rules of classical music, only to realize he was meant to rewrite them. After leaving behind the cold atmosphere of his childhood home, André entered the conservatories of Liège and Maastricht with the hope that music would finally feel free. But the world of professional training was not gentle. It came with even more discipline, strict teachers, and long hours of practice that pushed his body and mind to their limits. The conservatory expected perfection, and André worked tirelessly to meet those demands. He learned technique, theory, control, posture, and every detail required to become a serious classical violinist. From the outside, he looked like a young man moving smoothly toward a respectable future in music. Inside, however, something didn't sit right. The conservatory sharpened his skills, but did not soften his heart. He became technically strong, someone who could play difficult pieces with precision. But the emotional warmth he wanted to feel was still missing. The environment reminded him too much of his father's strict world, full of rules and seriousness. Music here was treated like a science, not a living thing. He followed the system because he had to, not because he believed in it. Yet even while he practiced for hours every day, a small part of him remained restless, waiting for something more meaningful than applause from teachers or perfect exam scores. After his studies, André joined professional symphony orchestras, the kind of jobs most classical musicians dream of. The salary was stable, the work was respected, the halls were beautiful. From the outside, André looked like he had succeeded. But the feeling inside him grew even stronger. He was not happy. Concerts often felt cold and formal. The musicians sat still, The conductor followed strict patterns, and the audience sat stiffly, clapping at the correct moments and staying silent the rest of the time. Everything felt controlled, predictable, and almost lifeless. What bothered him most was not the rules themselves, but the lack of emotional connection. He played his heart out, but nobody seemed moved. The audience admired the music, but they did not feel it deeply. They sat as if they were afraid to show any reaction. André looked at them and wondered why such beautiful music created such little joy. One question began to echo inside him again and again. Why don't they dance? This question was not childish. It came from a deep understanding of waltz music. A waltz is built for movement. Its rhythm naturally invites the body to sway or step. But in traditional concerts, everyone was trapped in chairs. Even the musicians looked like they were simply performing a duty. André could not understand why music that once made people gather in squares and dance freely had become something locked behind rigid concert hall rules. It felt wrong. It felt unnatural. When he shared these thoughts with other musicians, many dismissed him. Some told him classical music was not meant for dancing. Others said audiences preferred discipline and seriousness. A few even laughed, saying that André was too emotional and did not understand proper tradition. These reactions did not discourage him. They confirmed that something was broken in the classical world. It had become too closed, too proud, too disconnected from ordinary people. And André, unlike many of his peers, did not want to perform only for experts or elites. He wanted everyone young, old, rich, poor, trained, untrained, to feel the joy of music. The more he played in formal orchestras, the clearer his thoughts became. He started noticing how musicians rarely smiled, how the atmosphere backstage felt tense, and how the audience left the hall without any sense of excitement. He started imagining a different kind of performance, one where musicians interacted with the audience, where humor had a place, and where the music felt alive instead of trapped. This idea grew quietly at first, but day by day, it became stronger. He began to dream of an orchestra built on warmth instead of strictness, on connection instead of distance. He imagined musicians who enjoyed themselves on stage, who looked at each other and at the audience with happiness instead of pressure. He imagined crowds who were allowed to stand up, move, sing, or laugh. He imagined concerts that felt like celebrations, not ceremonies. The more he thought about it, the more he realized he was dreaming of a revolution, one that the classical world would not accept easily. Still, something inside him refused to let the dream go. His childhood had taken away affection, and now he wanted to build a space where affection existed through music. He wanted to bring joy to people who needed it. He wanted to take classical music out of its cage and return it to the streets, the squares, and the hearts of everyday people. He wanted to break the mold and show that classical music could be warm, friendly, and alive. André knew this dream would come with risk. He knew people would judge him, but he also knew that music, in its true form, should move people, not intimidate them. That simple belief became the seed of everything he would build later. And slowly, he gathered the courage to take the first step. He decided to form his own orchestra, one that would follow his heart instead of tradition. But every revolution begins with one believer, and André was about to meet the woman who would become the backbone of everything he dreamed. Before André built an orchestra for the world, Marjorie built a world where André could finally breathe. Their story began in a simple, natural way, without any dramatic scene or grand introduction. Marjorie was a teacher, someone who loved books, language, and ideas. She was not part of the music world, but she had a quiet wisdom that allowed her to see people more deeply than they often saw themselves. When she met André, she noticed something others missed. She saw the wounded artist behind the ambition, the man who carried childhood scars, and the dreamer who wanted to change classical music but didn't know where to start. What drew them together was not just love, but understanding. Marjorie had a calm mind and strong intuition. She could read people easily, and she sensed that André needed someone who believed in him without conditions. She recognized his talent, but more importantly, she recognized his loneliness. He had the skills of a musician, but the heart of a storyteller. She understood his frustration with stiff orchestras and silent crowds. She knew he was capable of something different, something bigger. Where André had emotion and passion, Marjorie had logic and planning. Where he dreamed, she organized. Where he doubted himself, she reminded him of his purpose. Together, they balanced each other in a way that made their partnership feel natural. From the very beginning, she supported his idea of bringing joy back into classical music. She didn't laugh at his vision, and she didn't question his desire to change things. Instead, she helped him build a path toward it. When André decided to create his own orchestra, it was Marjorie who helped turn the dream into reality. They had no big budget, no fancy office, and no financial safety net. Their early planning happened at their kitchen table, often late at night after long days of work. Papers were spread everywhere, lists of musicians, budgets, ideas for concerts, venues they could afford, and travel plans that barely fit into their small finances. They booked small halls, community events, and local gatherings because those were the only places willing to take a chance on them. Money was always tight. Some months they worried about paying musicians. Some nights, André wondered if he had made a mistake, leaving the security of a traditional orchestra. The fear of failure stayed with them, but Marjorie never let it control their decisions. She believed in the idea, even when results were slow. She encouraged André through every disappointment, reminding him that change takes time. Her steady support became the backbone of the young Strauss Orchestra. Marjorie took on responsibilities that most people never saw. She wrote the scripts André used between songs because she knew how to shape his thoughts into words the audience would understand. She negotiated contracts with venues and promoters, often spending hours on the phone convincing people to give the orchestra a chance. She organized travel schedules, managed finances, handled the business side of music, and created structure around André's creativity. She did the work he could not do, and she did it with patience and intelligence. Every concert program, every tour schedule, every public detail had her touch on it. When audiences laughed at André's jokes during early shows, they didn't know Marjorie had helped form the lines. When the orchestra managed to stay afloat, despite financial problems, they didn't know Marjorie had rearranged payments, budgets, and plans late into the night. She protected the dream as fiercely as André lived it. Emotionally, she gave André something he had never experienced growing up: acceptance. She listened to him, understood his fears, and supported his wish to bring happiness through music. Their relationship became a safe place where André could finally relax. With her, he didn't have to hide his pain or pretend to be stronger than he was. She gave him the emotional grounding he needed to keep moving forward. But the classical music world was not welcoming to their ideas. Many critics looked down on André's early attempts to make concerts more vibrant and more human. They dismissed his orchestra as too commercial or not serious enough. Some musicians refused to join him because they feared being judged by traditionalists. These early rejections hurt, but they also strengthened André and Marjorie's determination. They believed that joy deserved a place in classical music. They believed audiences deserved warmth, not stiffness. They believed music should bring people together, not push them apart. As the years passed, their teamwork grew stronger. They learned whom to trust, which risks to take, and how to handle setbacks. Slowly, they started to find small successes, audiences who responded warmly, venues that wanted them back, people who wrote letters saying the concerts made them feel alive again. Each positive moment reminded them they were moving in the right direction. Marjorie stayed behind the scenes, never seeking attention. While André stood under bright lights, she kept everything running quietly in the background. She knew the world needed to see him, not her. Her reward came from watching him shine, knowing she helped build the foundation beneath him. Without her, the dream would have never grown. Without her, André would have been just another talented musician struggling in a rigid system. And then, one night, everything changed the moment André touched his bow, and the world finally began to listen. Overnight success is a myth, but André's rise came so quickly, even he struggled to believe it. For years, he and Marjorie worked quietly, building their orchestra piece by piece, unsure if the world would ever take notice. Then, in the 1,990 seconds, everything changed with one unexpected moment. The piece was Second Waltz, a simple recording that spread faster than anyone imagined. Radio stations played it non-stop. People who had never cared about classical music suddenly found themselves humming it. The melody felt warm, light, and emotional, exactly what people didn't realize they had been missing. Almost overnight, André Rieu went from a small stage dreamer to a rising name that people across Europe were talking about. As interest grew, André felt brave enough to try something unusual for classical music: outdoor concerts. Instead of dark, formal halls, he chose open-air spaces where people could breathe, move, and enjoy the sky above them. He added theatrical lighting, colorful dresses, humor, and small stories between pieces. His concerts didn't feel like standard performances, they felt like friendly gatherings with thousands of people at once. The stage became a playground for joy, and André stood in the middle guiding everyone through it. Fans responded immediately. Something about the freedom of the space and the warmth in his music touched people deeply. Children danced, couples held hands. Elderly people who had not danced in years stood up with tears in their eyes. André watched crowds rise from their chairs in perfect timing with the music, as if their hearts recognized the rhythm before their bodies did. It was the moment he had dreamed of since childhood. Music that people didn't just listen to, but lived with their whole being. As the concerts grew, so did the crowds. Soon André was touring across Europe, then Australia, then Japan, then South America. In every country, audiences reacted the same way, with surprise, joy, and deep emotion. His DVDs became some of the best-selling music films in the world. In Australia, they topped national charts year after year, something no classical artist had ever achieved. For many families, watching an André Rieu concert DVD became a holiday tradition, a moment of comfort and togetherness. Among all these successes, one place became the heart of his global phenomenon: Maastricht. André decided to perform large summer concerts in his hometown, turning the city's central square into a giant outdoor ballroom. Fans from all over the world traveled to be there, sometimes booking tickets a year in advance. For many, attending a Maastricht concert felt like a pilgrimage, a once-in-a-lifetime event. People traveled from Brazil, Canada, South Africa, and Japan to sit under the warm European sky and hear André play the music that brought them peace. These concerts were not only performances, they were emotional experiences. The old buildings around the square lit up softly, the air carried excitement, and the entire city seemed to shine brighter for a few nights. When André walked on stage, thousands of people cheered, as if welcoming an old friend. By the time the first notes of the Blue Danube filled the air, the crowd had already surrendered to the moment. Maastricht became a symbol of joy, and André became the city's musical heartbeat. With each new tour and each new concert, André expanded his ideas. He introduced storytelling to classical shows, weaving humor and emotion between pieces. He created large stage designs that looked like scenes from fairy tales. In some concerts, he built full replicas of famous castles and palaces, complete with towers, balconies, and glowing windows. These sets were transported around the world on dozens of trucks, requiring teams of workers and months of preparation. People who attended the concerts often said they felt like they had stepped into a dream. All of this helped shape the Rieu brand, a combination of elegance, color, romance, and a deep love for music. His orchestra became like a family, smiling on stage, interacting playfully, and dressing in beautiful gowns and tuxedos that added to the magic. Each detail, from lighting to costumes to jokes, was designed to make classical music feel warm rather than distant. The waltz, once seen as old-fashioned, became a global love language that crossed age, culture, and language barriers. André proved that joy itself could be powerful enough to unite millions. But behind the scenes, the reality was much harder. Every concert required massive planning. The stages were complicated to build. The travel schedules were intense. Transporting equipment across continents cost huge amounts of money. André was not just an artist. He was running a huge company with more than 100 people depending on him. Every show was a risk. If ticket sales failed or weather interrupted an outdoor event, the financial losses could be enormous. As the orchestra grew, so did the pressure. André felt responsible for everyone: musicians, technicians, drivers, planners, and the families they supported. He wanted each concert to feel perfect. But the bigger the production became, the harder it was to keep everything under control. Even with fame and success, there were nights when he wondered whether the whole structure could collapse under its own weight. Still, he pushed forward. His heart believed in music that made people feel alive, and that belief carried him through exhaustion, long flights, and endless planning. He was living the dream he always wanted, but he was also pushing his body in ways it was never meant to handle. Fans saw the fireworks, the smiles, and the dancing, but they did not see the toll it took on the man holding the violin. But every empire has a hidden flaw, and André's was built on the one thing he could not replace: his own body. The man who made millions dance suddenly could not stand long enough to walk across a room. In 2010, when André was at the peak of his career, his life changed in a way he never expected. It started quietly, with small moments of dizziness he tried to ignore. He believed it was just stress, something that would pass. But one day, the world around him began to spin so violently that he could not keep his balance. The ceiling tilted, the floor felt unstable, and even opening his eyes made everything worse. This was not simple dizziness. It was a vestibular crisis so severe that he collapsed during his touring schedule, unable to stand, walk, or even sit without feeling like he was falling. Doctors diagnosed him with a serious problem involving his inner ear, the part of the body that controls balance. For a man who had spent decades moving confidently on stage, this condition felt like the ground disappearing beneath him. The spinning did not stop for hours. He had to lie still, afraid that even a small movement would send the world into another violent swirl. The man known for guiding thousands into waltz steps could not take one steady step himself. The first thing he had to do was cancel concerts. Stadiums had already been prepared. Tickets had been sold. Fans were waiting. The orchestra was on standby, but André could not perform. He could not even walk across the room without help. As announcements went out, disappointment spread among fans. But behind the scenes, the impact was much heavier. Each cancellation cost enormous amounts of money: venue fees, travel expenses, staff salaries, equipment rentals, all paid in advance and impossible to recover. Whole stadiums sat empty because the man who filled them with joy was trapped in bed, fighting to keep the room from spinning. Within weeks, the financial situation turned into a crisis. Estimates suggest that André and his company faced debts of €40 million. Bills piled up. Contracts had to be renegotiated. Banks demanded plans. Accountants warned of serious danger. Months of work disappeared overnight. The orchestra, consisting of more than 100 people, depended on him not just as a musician, but as the center of a massive business operation. The pressure on his shoulders grew heavier each day, even while he lay in bed unable to move without dizziness. This period took a deep emotional toll on André. For years, he had proudly carried the weight of his orchestra, the touring staff, and the thousands of people who worked behind the scenes. Now, he felt he was letting them all down. The fear of failure grew so strong that he struggled to sleep. He kept thinking, "What will happen to everyone if I cannot stand again?" The applause he once heard from thousands now echoed in his memory as a painful reminder of what he might lose. During these dark days, Marjorie stepped into a new role. Instead of focusing on the empire they built, she focused entirely on André's survival. She shielded him from financial meetings and harsh realities, taking calls, managing crises, and speaking to lawyers and bankers while he rested. She became the wall between him and the chaos outside. She told him that the priority was not concerts or money, it was his health. For the first time in years, she ignored the business completely and protected the man she loved. Rehabilitation became André's daily routine. Doctors gave him exercises to help retrain his balance system. They looked simple on paper, standing on one foot, moving the eyes in circles, shifting weight from side to side. But for André, they were exhausting. He repeated them several times a day, slowly, carefully, often sweating with effort. Progress was slow. Some days he felt stronger. Other days the dizziness returned without warning. He realized that recovery was not measured in days or weeks, but in tiny steps. One surprising source of strength came from a fan in Australia who wrote him a letter describing his own recovery from the same condition. The fan shared exercises and tips that had helped him regain control. André read the letter many times, taking comfort in the fact that someone else had survived what he was facing. He followed the exercises faithfully, grateful for the connection with a stranger who understood his fear. As months passed, the spinning episodes became less frequent. André managed to stand longer, then walk short distances, then finally lift his violin without losing balance. Yet even as his body improved, the emotional wounds remained. The fear of the dizziness returning never fully left him. Every rehearsal felt like a test. Every step onto a stage felt like a risk. For the first time in his life, he questioned whether music, the thing he loved most, was also the thing that could endanger him. When he finally returned to performing, audiences cheered, believing their beloved waltz king had made a full comeback. But only André and those close to him knew the truth. He still moved carefully. He still felt a hidden sense of unsteadiness. Loud noises, fast movements, or sudden turns could trigger brief moments of imbalance. He performed with courage, but also with caution. The fear of collapsing again lived quietly inside him. This health crisis changed how André viewed his own identity. He had always thought of himself as strong, energetic, and unstoppable. Now he understood that even he had limits. He realized the empire he built depended entirely on his ability to stand on stage, and that knowledge frightened him. If anything happened to his body, everything built over decades could fall apart in a matter of days. It was a heavy truth for him to carry. He kept performing because music was still his life, but the experience had changed him forever. Every smile, every bow, every performance carried the memory of the night he could not stand. Even when he returned to the stage, the shadow of dizziness followed him, and time was about to demand an even heavier price. A legend does not fade, but even legends must learn to walk slower when their hearts begin to tire. As André entered his 70s, time began to show itself in small but unmistakable ways. His silver hair became brighter, his steps slightly slower, and his body less forgiving after long flights and long performances. He was still loved everywhere he went, but age brought a softness that even he could not hide. Years of touring, rehearsing, and carrying the emotional weight of an entire orchestra had left their marks. He was still the king of the waltz, but he now moved with the careful pace of someone who understood that strength is no longer unlimited. While André continued performing, the internet became a place filled with strange noise. Rumors began spreading, many started by people who wanted views more than truth. Some posts claimed he had died. Others invented illnesses he did not have. Some said he was bankrupt. None of it was true. but the lies spread faster than facts. These rumors hurt his fans, but they also hurt André's family. His son even had to speak publicly, saying clearly, "My father is still here. Please stop spreading these things." André tried not to let these stories affect him, but deep down, it felt strange to watch the world discuss his life as if he were no longer in control of it. Fame had given him many beautiful moments, but it also took away his right to age quietly. Then came one of the hardest moments of his later career, Mexico City, 2024. The city is more than 2,000 meters above sea level, and performing there is physically demanding even for someone younger. André arrived tired from travel, and a strong flu was already affecting his body. After the second concert, exhaustion hit him with frightening force. He developed a high fever, struggled to breathe comfortably, and could barely gather enough strength to walk. His body had reached its limit. The remaining 4 concerts had to be cancelled. More than 40,000 tickets were refunded. The orchestra and staff arranged emergency flights home. From the outside, it looked like a scheduling mistake, but for André, it felt like a warning from his own body. He later admitted that he called Marjorie in a weak voice and said, "I don't ever want to open a tour day like this again." It was a moment of vulnerability that reminded everyone, especially his family, that even legends need protection. This was when Pierre, his son, stepped fully into a leadership role. He understood that his father could not continue as if he were still 40 years old. Pierre took control of the touring calendar, changed travel plans, shortened schedules, and reduced physically demanding tours. He set clearer limits, even turning down offers that would have brought in large profits because he knew André's life mattered more. He became the shield his father needed, not just in business, but in health. Slowly, André's concerts also began to change. Instead of fast, intense pieces for long stretches, he introduced slower waltzes and more moments of speaking to the audience. He told stories, shared memories, and joked more often between songs. These weren't just artistic choices, they allowed him to rest without stopping the flow of the show. The audience loved it. They didn't want him to push himself beyond his limits. They wanted him to stay healthy and keep performing for as many years as possible. While André adjusted to aging on stage, another emotional change was happening behind the scenes. Marjorie, the woman who had worked beside him for almost 50 years, was growing older too. Her health, which had already been delicate for years, no longer allowed her to travel to every show. Long flights, late nights, and the stress of touring became too much for her. Slowly, quietly, she stepped back. She did not make an announcement. She simply reduced her involvement, staying home more often, resting, and allowing Pierre and others to take over responsibilities she had managed for decades. For André, this shift was painful in a quiet, personal way. She had been his partner in everything: the planning, the decisions, the emotional support, the foundation of his career. Touring without her felt strange, almost empty. She had always been there behind the curtain, guiding him, solving problems, and giving him confidence. Now, he had to learn how to stand on those stages without her presence nearby. Even though she still watched concerts through live streams and stayed emotionally connected, her physical absence was a reminder that time was moving forward for both of them. Back home, their castle became a place of peace rather than planning. Marjorie focused on rest, books, and family, while André learned to accept a new rhythm of life. He returned home more often, took more breaks, and spent more evenings quietly instead of traveling from one country to another. The world still saw him smiling on stage, but the truth was that he was slowly adjusting to a life shaped more by health and age than by non-stop ambition. Yet, despite all these changes, the rumors continued to grow. People online interpreted his slower steps as signs of fatal illness. Others misread Marjorie's absence as a marital problem. Some claimed his reduced touring schedule meant he was retiring. None of these stories understood the real picture. André was simply an aging man trying to balance his passion with his health, and a loving husband trying to protect the woman who had protected him for decades. But even as the world whispered about his decline, André was preparing the part of his story that would outlive every rumor. His greatest achievement wasn't filling stadiums, it was teaching the world that joy is not a luxury, but a form of survival. André Rieu changed classical music in a way almost nobody expected. Before him, classical concerts were quiet, polite, and often intimidating for people who didn't grow up listening to that kind of music. But André broke that wall. He made classical music warm, friendly, and welcoming. He gave it a smile. He opened the doors so wide that people of all ages, backgrounds, and cultures felt invited to join in. Because of him, millions now see classical music not as something distant or difficult, but as something they can enjoy and share with others. His influence reached far beyond his own orchestra. Around the world, youth orchestras and music teachers began to change their approach. They started talking to their audiences, adding small jokes, explaining pieces in simple ways, and creating concerts where people felt included instead of judged. What André did on stage created a ripple effect. Young musicians saw that it was okay to smile, okay to move, okay to enjoy the music while playing it. They learned that the stage didn't have to be a place of fear or pressure, it could be a place of connection. In many ways, André helped a whole generation realize that classical music is not just about technique, it is also about emotion, humanity, and togetherness. One of André's most remarkable contributions was turning joy into a serious artistic value. People used to think joy was light, something without depth. But André proved otherwise. He showed that joy can heal, joy can unite, and joy can remain in someone's heart long after the concert ends. He made joy feel luxurious, like something precious and worth protecting. His concerts were not just performances, they were celebrations. And for many who attended, those nights became treasured memories that stayed with them for years. The emotional legacy he created is impossible to measure in numbers. It lives in the small moments people experienced at his shows. An elderly couple, standing slowly, holding hands, dancing for the first time in decades. A child watching the violinists in their colorful gowns and deciding they want to learn to play too. Families sharing smiles under warm summer skies in Maastricht. Friends hugging during the Blue Danube. People crying because a piece reminded them of a loved one. These simple, human moments became the true core of André's career. He wasn't just entertaining people, he was giving them pieces of joy they could carry home like gifts. As André grew older, he also began thinking about the future of his orchestra. He never wanted his work to end with him. He wanted the joy he created to continue long after he could no longer stand on stage. Part of this future became visible through Emma, a young violinist with great talent and a gentle stage presence. She performed with the orchestra at several concerts, showing that a new generation was ready to carry the music forward. Her presence was a quiet sign that André's world would not disappear, it would evolve. Pierre, André's son, also became an important part of this future. He stepped into a leadership role to help protect his father's health and guide the orchestra with fresh ideas. He understood the emotional meaning behind André's music, but also the practical needs of running such a large production. Pierre learned how to balance creativity with responsibility, making sure the orchestra could continue performing safely and strongly even as André slowed down. Through him, the structure of the orchestra became more secure. At home, André's life became simpler in a beautiful way. His castle in Maastricht was no longer just a headquarters for planning concerts. It became a place of peace. André tended to his plants, walked his dog around the garden, read books in quiet rooms, and practiced violin not out of pressure but out of love. These ordinary routines helped him stay grounded after decades of constant travel. Inside those walls, he could breathe, think, and feel grateful for everything he had lived through. His private moments showed the gentle side of the man behind the big concerts. He enjoyed cooking simple meals, watching the seasons change from the castle windows, and talking with Marjorie about their memories. Sometimes he sat alone with his violin, playing soft notes that only he could hear. In those small moments, he felt something deep, something almost healing, because even with all the struggles, all the exhaustion, all the dizziness, all the years spent chasing perfection, music still brought him comfort. It still felt like home. When people look at André's life, it is easy to focus on the records he broke, the tours he completed, and the millions of DVDs he sold. But the real story is something much softer. The boy who grew up without warmth became the man who gave warmth to millions. The child who was never told he was loved became the artist who made others feel loved simply through the sound of a violin. The man who once felt invisible created a world where no one in the audience ever felt alone. This is the heart of his legacy. Not fame, not money, not charts, but the way he changed how people feel. The way he reminded the world that happiness is not childish, that joy is not simple, and that music can be both gentle and powerful at the same time. He didn't just reshape classical music. He reshaped the emotional experience of millions of people who needed something beautiful to hold on to. Today, as André continues performing with more caution and more awareness of his limits, he also accepts that he is entering the final chapter of his journey. He has given the world everything he had, his energy, his time, his heart, and the world has given him something back: love, appreciation, and a place in history that no rumor or illness can ever erase. But as André Rieu steps into the twilight of his life, one final question remains, the one only time and one last waltz can answer.